Donna Schwartz here from the Everything Saxophone Podcast, and I'm not live at NAMM. No, we finished up our NAMM series. I'm here live, though, with Jason Gay, who I did meet at NAMM, at the NAMM Show 2025. And by the way, NAMM stands for National Association of Music Merchants, if you weren't aware of that. So
Wow, funny
happy.
story about that.
Oh, yeah. So happy to have you on the show, Jason.
It's my pleasure to be here. And I do have a funny short story about that NAMM thing. Yeah, I told a singer as soon as I came back from NAMM, and NAMM is amazing. We could definitely talk about that. So as soon as I came back, I told her I went to NAMM, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that the music scene was that jumping in Vietnam." Yeah, I had an uncontrollable laugh for like 3 minutes.
So glad you started off that way.
Until I was able to explain what NAMM was, and I did the same thing you did, and I was like, "No, it's
Oh my God.
it's a place where a lot of musicians meet, and a great place to check out products and networking and all these things."
Yeah, and actually, I never would have. I like to play around with words a lot. I can't believe I didn't come up with that one. I'm really upset with myself. But
She's like so sincere too. She was like, "Oh, I didn't realize there's such a music scene in Vietnam." I was like, I get it. You know, like
oh my God,
you
that's
know,
hysterical. That's hysterical. And you know what? Let's go down this path for a second. So, yeah, I've been covering the NAMM show for we were just talking about this before we aired live. About 6 years now. 6 years. I started off with Rulon Brown at the Key Leaves booth, and that was an
oh, yeah.
awesome, fun thing. I interviewed people like we were talking about Chelsea Barrett's, Leo P, Lakeisha Benjamin, right? Now
Oh,
she's like a
yeah.
superstar. I'm so happy for her. It's just
Wow.
incredible. And so I started off that way, and now, I'm still doing it. I'm roaming the floor and all that kind of thing. But what what's great about NAMM that people don't realize, they're like, NAMM, what is that? It's really for music merchants. It's for companies like Jody Jazz, for example, you're endorsed by. Um, Theo Wane instrument, mouthpieces, Cannonball Instruments. We just put that episode out,
Oh,
actually, on
yeah,
the
yeah.
podcast.
I wanted to talk to
Cannonball.
you about that too, but yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And, all these different companies, Reed Makers, Rovner Products, who's always sponsored the podcast. They're wonderful people too. It's for these companies to make connections with other companies and brokers and dealers and music shops to be able to sell their products, but also to let the world know of the new things that are coming out. And that's why a lot of artists go as well, because they're showcasing whether it's new mouthpieces, new reeds, new products like the Ligature booth, who I love those guys. They're so great. They've sponsored the podcast many times. I use Ligature as well. Derek Brown always comes in and does a little thing there every single year, you know. P. Moriat, lately, my gosh, all the shows that they've been putting on are just insane. They have like whole groups of, players and all that kind of thing. And it's so awesome. Jody Jazz, with his mouthpieces every single time there's like and you were part of it this time, right? And they have groups of people playing, and it's a lot of fun. And they're showcasing, and even Theo Wane too, they're showcasing all of the products and especially some of the new ones. So that's a piece of NAMM. The other piece of NAMM that people don't realize is that they also have educational workshops for music dealers, for
Oh, right.
students, for teachers now to, like, for example, music stores, how to help them stay in business, essentially, marketing advice, all that kind of thing.
Oh,
For
wow.
students, college students, here's what you can do in the music world, that it doesn't just have to always be performance. You can get involved in the music industry because it's rich, it's vibrant. And when I mean rich, I mean, filled with ideas, all that kind of thing. Um, Workshops, classes with famous artists who, are talking about their craft. I remember I attended Brandy Carlisle last year, and that was a great, workshop, and she was talking about how she worked with Joni Mitchell and all that kind of stuff. So there's so much more involved with NAMM. There's concerts going on all the time. But I was just walking the floor, and then I saw you performing at the Jody Jazz booth with
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that's right, with Dr. Scott and Taj, I think. And yeah, that was awesome. So it was really cool meeting you there.
Yeah. My pleasure as well. I've been a fan of yours ever since you've been one of the longest voices on YouTube. Yeah. as soon as it began, or near this time it's begun. I remember as soon as I kind of developed an interest on saxophone and started using YouTube as a resource, you're one of the people that popped up.
Oh,
You
wow.
know,
That's
that's
cool.
so I've been watching your videos and picking up on tips, and yeah, you always have wonderful advice, and you've been feeding the community
Oh,
and
thank you.
really helping us sustain ourselves. So I really appreciate you for that. So yeah, it's totally. I mean, of course, I recognize you. Of course, it's like Donna Schwartz, and then I'm really flattered to have the invitation to be here because it's one thing to be a fan of a certain thing, and the next thing you know, you see yourself on there. So it's like, hey, I made it. I've arrived.
That's awesome.
I'm
And
done. No more saxophone needed.
so you saw me at NAMM because I had like I wore the big billboard. No, I just I just
Oh
wear my
yeah,
shirts, but the big billboard.
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I saw you at the Jody Jazz booth, right? And you play the DV the metal, the DV7 or 7 star or something like that.
Yeah, you know what? I recently switched. I play the Super Jet now.
Oh, got it. Okay. Okay, cool. And is that a front the ligature on that?
This is a Francois Louis.
That's it. Got it. Yeah.
A lot of people say that the ligature does not make a difference, but I disagree. I think the ligature makes a huge difference.
Let's
I
talk about that. I agree with you.
can't think why, but you know,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I've interviewed a lot of people and some people have said they think, it doesn't have any effect. But I disagree with that. And not because I'm sponsored by Rovner Products. It's nothing to do with that. I could just
I like Rovner a lot.
Oh, they're wonderful people. And a lot of the ligature makers do extensive research. They don't just slap things together like a rubber band and that's not the purpose of a ligature. I mean, obviously it's to hold the reed in place and whatnot, but I'm telling you, you try one ligature to another and you record yourself, you can hear a difference. But more importantly, I think you feel a difference. It does something. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that in terms of like ligatures and stuff like that?
Yeah, I kind of have I have maybe 4 or 5 ligatures I have on my table. I mean, I pretty much play the Francois Louis ligature most of the time, but I also have the Jody Jazz Power Ring. I think I have the Rovner. Is it the Versa?
Yeah.
I use a Rovner on my soprano, but for the tenor, every horn is different, and we're dealing with vibrations, and we're dealing with like our oral cavities and our body types, and it's like we're vibrating as well as the horn itself. So it's a whole lot of factors kind of involved there when it comes on what type of sound you get, and then the type of sound that you want to get. And then I really like what you said about how it feels. So I think that's the most important thing is like how it feels to play the note, because that kind of determines the note you're going to play. It determines your experience of playing music. And I know sometimes my wife is like, why do you have to practice so long? Why do you have to practice every day? And it's like, if I miss like 2 days, it feels like a foreign object, even though she's like, yeah, you sound fine, and it's like, it doesn't feel that good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
No, I
know?
totally agree with you. And as a trumpet player too, like one day not playing, all right, you feel it. Even 2 days, it's like, ugh, it just feels awful, and like the feel with a ligature too, some ligatures, if they're not right for you, they're going to feel constraining. It's just not going
Yeah,
to help it flow. But for the right ligature for you, whatever company you use, the whole idea is that you want the equipment to get out of the way. And when the equipment's in the way, it does something to you subconsciously. It really does. It's like you keep thinking about, okay, why is my tone not as, the way I want it? Why is it not ringing? Why is it not projecting? Or, what's going on here? Why am I working harder than I need to? And the ligature, I think the right ligature for you has a big part to that.
totally. And I tell you, uh, I guess I tend to jump around, so please feel free to like direct me or shape the focus or redirect me if necessary. But that's actually the reason why I like Jody Jazz mouthpieces, because they are free blowing and they feel as if the mouthpiece is not there for me. I played the hard rubber for maybe 6 7 years. Then I switched over to what did I go to? The Jumbo Java, which is the first time I played a high baffle mouthpiece.
Wait a minute,
And
that Jumbo Job is Van Doren. So,
yeah.
oh,
This is
okay.
before I was endorsed with Jody Jazz.
Got
So I
it.
played that, and I'm like really digging the high baffles. Like, hey, they can hear me, I'm playing in these rock bands. So then I switched from that to Sios. And I was endorsed with Sios for a while. I created my own piece, and that was a great experience. But for what I wanted to do, I felt like a metal piece was really supportive for me playing the blues, trying to deal with these electric guitars, turning their amps all the way up,
Yeah.
bass players and loud drummers. So the DV was a perfect fit. I played that for probably about a year and a half. And then recently I switched to the Super Jet, which I didn't like at first. And then I played it in the showroom, instead of my little closet where I practice in. And the sound just kind of went out.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is pretty cool. Let me see if I can get one. So for me, which is the reason saying all that, just to say this, I feel like the mouthpiece gives me so much of what I want. I really have to think about what it is I want. Does that make sense? Because it really responds to whatever I'm thinking. So I'm like,
yeah.
Do I want it to be this way? Do I want to have a growly sound? Like, I really have to really focus on what I want, because the mouthpiece is really going to give me what it is.
And you're focusing on what you want musically as compared to subconsciously, like, why can't I get what I want?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to do that little plug for Jody Jazz, but I guess it did kind of happen.
No,
But
cool.
really the main thing I wanted to emphasize is just the idea of the equipment not getting in your way, just like you said.
Yeah. And, all the companies that I'm mentioning, they're all great people. That's the one thing I love about NAMM too, and especially I really felt that this year too, it was just so great seeing everybody. I've been going there since 2015. Holy cow. And yeah, just seeing the companies every year, meeting new companies, and all that kind of thing, but seeing people every year. And these people are wonderful. They really are. And with the Superjet, what's interesting too, I know a lot of people that use the Superjet, and one person that comes to mind is Tim Price. Tim Price was a phenomenal player, great educator. He was a great guy. And I'll never forget one of the times I was playing in one of the NAMM Pro Jams and stuff, sponsored by Jody Jazz and Rovner and I think Ligature. And so there were like
I think I
20.
saw one of those. I think I saw you on one of those.
Okay, yeah. It was
A
a while ago. I don't remember the year, but so there's like 25 of us on stage, and the two people who didn't go on the stage were Tim Price and, oh my gosh, I could see his name, Brian, I think, from Jody Jazz. Oh, the name escapes me, but anyway, those guys played a Superjet. So we're sitting up there, we're playing into the mics, and then when we're all playing, and even when those guys were soloing, they didn't need a mic. They had the Superjet.
Wow.
They had the Superjet. And when we were playing, you still heard them, even though they were not mic'd. So that mouthpiece to me is a mouthpiece on steroids. Okay, that's the way I describe it. And, again, it's the one thing I want people to remember too. You need to try out your equipment, all that kind of thing. The idea is you don't want something that's so free blowing you can't control it, right? But you want it so that it's something that is going to make you want the equipment out of your way so you could express yourself. That's the most important thing. To me, that's the goal of equipment. I'm not a gear geek in any way, shape, or form like some of my friends are, but I know some of the stuff that's out there, and I know, all the, the great companies that are out there, all the ones that you mentioned, and there's so many more too, and the whole goal, people, they have a dream, they make their products, they want to help people. I think about the awesome guys at Retro Revival, right? Those guys, they're phenomenal, with the mouthpieces, with the horns and all that kind of thing,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're phenomenal. And, the goal is to help people, and that's the bottom line. But yeah, so I saw you at the Jody Jazz booth, you playing with Dr. Scott and all them. And that was really great to meet you there. So you've been with Jody for a bit, right? You've been with Jody for, I guess, a few years and stuff like that,
Yeah.
playing the DV, now playing the Superjet. Let's talk, let's talk equipment. I normally don't get too into equipment, but let's talk about that. So you're playing the Jody Jazz, you're playing the Superjet, was it 7 or something, or?
I played a DV7, then I also ordered a DV7 Star.
Right.
And for me, there's a huge difference between just that little star.
Yep.
It feels like it's blown into a cavern versus playing something that's really concise. So the 7 felt like a good fit. The Superjet, I asked for a 7, but Danielle at Jody Jazz reminded me. She's like, okay, but the one you played in the showroom was a 7-star, and I was like, well, I want that. I want what I had in the showroom. So I don't want to, because for me, I have to get things mailed in. Being in
Yeah.
Hawaii, like everything's pretty much export import. You can't really go to a store and try these things.
Wow.
So yeah, so I received it, and yeah, that was it. It is a little bigger, but at the same time, since it projects much clearer and it's more focused of a sound, I think it kind of works out. So I'm kind of growing into it a little bit in order to really, because in order to fill it up, like I'm making my neighbors mad now. But before it was kind of like a thing that we kind of managed it, and now all of a sudden, I hear people moving around the house and stuff. So I can play it soft, but as a saxophone player, I think it's important to be able to that kind of ties into like a Joe Viola story, but I think it's important to be able to really project as hard as you can so you can kind of have your area to work within, right? Like the softest possible and then the loudest possible. Then hopefully you'll never have to do either, right? Because next, either overblowing or underblowing. So we all kind of exist in the middle, but it's good to practice, I think, as soft as possible and then as loud as possible, just so you can have those parameters, I think. So I try to play loud from time to time, and soft, but
Well, let me ask you this question, because you had said that the neighbors are moving around. I'm sorry, that's
yeah,
funny.
it's an issue. It's become an issue like overnight.
And let me jump to left field for 1 second, and let me say this, please, listeners. A lot of you talk to me, you ask for suggestions about, gosh, I live in a condo or an apartment, and my neighbor's complaining. You really honestly do have the right to practice your instrument from I would say 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning to at least 8 p.m., sometimes a little later at night. If you're playing in the middle of the night, you gotta have some common sense there, but you have the right to do that. You really do. As long as it's not blaring loud, you have the right to do that. So I just wanted to say that. But are you finding, though, with a mouthpiece like the Superjet, is it a little harder for you to control the softs, and maybe that's only because you just started using it, fairly recently?
It feels a little different. It's just more of a matter of me just getting used to it. The way it feels different is it has an insanely high baffle, where
Yeah.
instead of a regular mouthpiece where you're putting air through here, all of a sudden now you're putting air through here
Right.
in order to get it into the mouthpiece. So I definitely feel that new ceiling when I blow. I feel the air not go like this. I feel it kind of go like this. But besides that, it's just a matter of me just getting used to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think my quiets are still as quiet. I've been playing it for probably about a month now,
Got
and
it.
every week is better. I try to record myself, and I definitely like their direction. And just like you said, as far as for the listeners, it's important to have the right gear for what you do. For me, my foundation is a jazz musician. And then we could talk about the Sidney Bechet book that I recently put out,
Absolutely.
which is a little different on soprano for me, but for tenor, tenor is something that I play a lot more, but it's also a lot more difficult because it's like this huge horn you have to fill with air, and it's a lot more difficult for me to control it. So I practice tenor probably 90% of the time, just so that it feels like it's not difficult.
Yeah.
I forgot my point.
About the gear, about choosing your gear and the gear not, the gear getting out of the way and all that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for reminding me, because that was a pretty good point. I think it's important to think about like the style of music that you're playing and what you need it for. And then you put that with the comfort and all those other things. For me, the scene here has shifted so much in Honolulu, where I was playing almost every gig was a jazz gig with some type of jam band, jazzy, improvisatory sort of thing. And now it's mostly like wedding bands and corporate gigs. I also have to think more about, being able to support my family. So I'm taking the more jobs that pay more. And a lot of us say that not all the time, but typically for a musician like me, a blue collar working class musician, when you get paid more, the more you get paid, the less fun you're having.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
which is
so
not,
interesting.
and it's not, there's ways you can still have fun being in a horn section, or you can play Bruno Mars song and still have fun. Not saying you're not having fun, but it's not like you're playing a jam session where you're playing like all the things you are, and then you're playing like, footprints and all these things, where you're really totally free just to be creative. Not quite as free in like a wedding band gig or a corporate thing or something.
Yeah, because it has to be a polished product, and there's lots of different types of corporate gigs, but with a wedding band, it's got to be super tight, it's got to be super tight with that. And wow, yeah, that's I haven't heard someone say that in a long time, but yeah, that is true. And that could be an issue for artists, because the thing is that you have to be true to yourself in terms of the type of number one music that you want to play, but also the types of gigs that you want to do. A lot of people that not only just listen to the podcast, but just players in general, playing different ages in your life, all that kind of thing. If you want to be in a wedding band, you also need a lot of energy too, because those are like 3, 4 hour gigs and they expect you to dance and do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Do your research, in terms of like where you want to play or what you want to play, what style and what types of groups as well.
totally, totally. So yeah, for me, the jet works perfect because unfortunately, it can be a competitive environment. Where like say I'll play a solo and then I see the guitar player go to his amp and turn it up a little bit. This is like, oh
Wow.
boy, here we go.
It's annoying.
It's like egos kind of become more involved, and I think they exist in all musical circles. But there's this I like memes, and sometimes I get trapped on Instagram. But I saw this great meme. It was it's Schofield talking to Bill Frisell. I guess they're giving like a workshop, and there's this one caption where they said, "Music is not about competition. Music should be about rescuing each other. Like really just supporting each other so much that even if you're kind of going down a rabbit hole or you're starting to make a mistake, that they actually help to bring you back in, in order to make this song awesome. And I think the audience can feel that, you know.
Yeah, they feel, that's so interesting that you bring that up. And, this is going along with like the scene that you have in Honolulu and Hawaii and all that kind of thing. And it's not just there, it's essentially everywhere. The whole idea of it being competitive, it turns off a lot of people, not just players, but audience too. And it also turns off players, kind of like, I hate to say it, but it kind of scares them away. And it shouldn't be that. Music's not about that. Yeah, people revel in the stories with, Charlie Parker with those jam sessions and having cymbals thrown at him and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? That's if someone if that's how bandmates are going to treat, each other, whatever, I know I wouldn't want to be in that band because their head's somewhere else. They're not in the music. They're all about, oh, it's all about me and this and that and whatever. Yeah, you want to have a high standard for, whatever you do, as high a standard as you possibly can, but um putting the ego in and, you know, putting people down or whatever doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Totally. Yeah,
Bad
and
energy.
I feel like it's almost like growing pains, or I know I experienced that a good bit. Being in college, I was always like the second tier. You know what I mean? Like there's a top tier, and then there's like the tier right under them. So I was a
Okay.
tier under them. So I was very respected. I went to college in Berkeley, and then I finished up in Richmond, Virginia. Um, so like there's a lot of gigs, and everybody was appreciated as a very healthy scene. But at the same time, there's a little bit of snobbery from that top tier.
Okay.
you know. So for me, it was always very amusing whenever the top tier would go to New York to move, and then they'd come back 6 months later. And then people who were in the second tier go to New York and then stay, and they end up touring with like groups all over the world and everything.
Wow, interesting. Why do you think that is? That's interesting.
I'm not exactly sure why. I haven't really spent a lot of time in New York. I visited New York, but I never attempted to move to New York because I wanted to get my credit together. Yeah, I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need to go into a deficit. I needed to get it better. So I chose a different path, and we can talk about that later too. But I think the idea of this is my theory, and I think it could have something to it. When you think you already made it, or you think you're top tier, and you think you're there, and then you go to New York and realize you're not. It's probably a huge like, who's that bunny foo when they get bopped on the head, or whatever. I have kids, so so probably it's probably a very very humbling experience. Where if it's a person who already knows they're like not the best, but they're trying and they're trying, then they go to New York, it's like, okay, well, I guess instead of a ceiling being here is here. Okay, well, let me just do what I've been doing anyway and get back to work. For some reason, a lot of people who were considered underdogs went to New York and thrived pretty well. Like a good friend of mine. Not trying to. I don't want to name drop any. I think it's okay. Yeah, Jason Arce is a good friend of mine.
Okay, got it.
And he was we went to school together, and he was, I think I was maybe like a junior and he was a freshman, and he's always like outgoing, and you have to start somewhere. And he went from like being like, from here you just see him just kind of rise. And, people kind of putting, I don't know about really putting them down, but the top tier just does what they do. And next thing you know, he like goes to New York and he's touring with his top groups, and I saw him playing with like Paul McCartney and Prince, and
Wow.
I think he tours with a group called Blood Orange, and then he comes back and it's like the same guys who are top two are still in the same town, playing coffee houses and stuff. And
Wow.
so I guess there could be a lesson in humility, also a lesson in no one ever arrives there. And another good lesson, like, don't crap on people just because they're on their journey or they don't know what because we all have a certain path and we all have certain strengths, and everybody's not meant to know everything. Everybody's not meant to do everything.
Yeah, but exactly what you said in terms of, humility, but also the thing I'm thinking too is that when you're the underdog, when you feel like you're the underdog, you're going to work harder. And so you're going to have a different kind of work ethic as well.
Oh, yeah, that's so true.
Think about it. And, when you know you're, like top dog and stuff like that, there's two ways to approach that. You can maybe even three. One way is to be like, oh, yeah, I've quote unquote made it. No one ever makes it. All the people I've spoken to on this podcast, the greatest players ever, never said they made it. But some people think that. Another, way that people would react when they're top dog would be, yeah, I'm going to keep working hard and all that kind of thing, and I'm going to keep going. That's awesome. But one of the best things that people that feel like they're top dog would be to help others, help teach others. The only thing though, with a lot of people that have a lot of talent, they don't understand when people struggle. And so they don't know how to help people, and that's why also I can, maybe make the assumption that some people that were underdogs or, struggled a little bit, those are the people that are going to be pretty good teachers because they understand that.
Oh, okay. I can see that. That makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I definitely wasted money trying to get lessons with guys who are awesome musicians and couldn't tell me anything.
Yeah, because they may not have struggled, and whereas, you study with somebody who is still a really good musician, but is a better teacher, that's where you learn, that's where you really learn, and that person cares about what they're doing, because teaching, people don't realize teaching is a lot harder than, a lot of people, be like, oh, I'll just take some students on, teach lessons. You got to think about the people that you're teaching when you do that. Are you someone that, cares about the other person enough? Or are you just trying to make
Yeah,
extra income, And
yeah,
do you care about their journey? Or are you just like, I'll just have them play out of a book. I just need the money. If that's why you're teaching, stop, because you're dealing with another human being and, who, may be struggling with stuff or whatever the case may be. Yeah, I went off on a rant right now, but anyway,
Oh,
yeah.
no, no, no. I'm all the way with you, and it's making me think about the importance of band directors. And I'm thinking about like, would I be doing what I'm doing if not for my band director? It makes me think about I had this natural uh inclination to play music. Like I got my first saxophone. I saw the movie Mo Better Blues, and I see these musicians, living in high-rise apartments in Manhattan, playing jazz in these beautiful clubs, elaborate, and I'm like, yeah, I could do that. How hard can it be? So I got my first saxophone, and I'm just in love with music. I'm just practicing. I don't even know what I'm doing at all. And then my band director, saw, that I'm actually liking band. I'm really enjoying it, not just using it as an easy A or something. And he let me know, like, hey, you can play music, you can be in bands, you can, we could form a band here at the school. I did the talent show, and found some like-minded individuals who, like a good friend of mine plays saxophone too, or a guy who plays bass, and we all want to play and come together, just making noise together, playing like some bad blues or something, or playing like Chameleon for 30 minutes, stuff like that. And then I joined it's sort of like a dramatic acting group in DC when I was 16, where like I didn't begin playing in like sports bars or dive bars or something like that. I played like big stages when I first began, like big like theaters, because it was it's part of this acting group. It's about 40 kids between the ages of 14 and 18, and of course the parents kind of like managed everything. But we kind of went on tour up and down the East Coast. This is like before I even know like really what scales are. I think we played like Night in
Wow.
Tunisia. We did all blues and footprints. And there's for the show to be an hour and a half, we had like a 15-minute jazz segment where we wore like beards and stuff and dressed like we're old men and stuff. And, you know, so it's a nice way to kind of like get into this imagined culture of what jazz is before I really got into the culture. And then it gave me a chance to really know what it's like to play for people. So I advanced from that. Then I advanced to the sports bar where like everybody wants to see the game and they're like, can you turn the band down? And, stuff like that. It's kind of a funny way to start. But if not for my band director, I don't even know that I would know that it's something I could do. You know what I mean? As far as I can play music and I can push it, there's a place to go with it.
Let me ask you something. So, all right, where did you grow up? What exact age did you start? And yeah, I'm just curious, like you're saying you're going up, going up and down the East Coast and playing, but you're not really necessarily like working on scales and stuff. So yeah, so what age did you start? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up, born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area, like they call it the DMV, like Maryland, Virginia, D.C., kind of like around the Beltway area. Um, and so I think I first heard about joining the band when I was in fourth grade, and I wanted to play the saxophone. And the teacher is like, "Oh, we have enough saxophone players. We need you on trumpet."
Oh,
So
okay.
I went and got a trumpet. I rented a trumpet, and then I went to class, and there's like four trumpets in the corner, and one little kid with a saxophone. I'm like, hey, ain't this something? Which is a great way to set up my life, right?
Oh, wow. That's just so weird. Okay.
It is a nice way to introduce me to the irony that could be the music business at times. Yeah, so I played trumpet, and I was so bad on trumpet that they had to invent a fourth chair for me to sit in because I could barely even tune up. And somehow I like stuck with it for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years. Um,
Wow.
it wasn't until I made it to ninth grade where I saw that movie Mo Better Blues, and I was like, you know what? Even though I'm playing trumpet, I'm just going to get a saxophone. I'm just going to get it, and I'll just have it, and I'll play it at the house. So I started on soprano saxophone because I thought it looked cool. The fact that it was like straight and it was like metallic, and it wasn't so common like the common saxophones. And people are like, hey, if you're starting the sopranos, it's hard, man. You're not going to play in tune. And I'm like, well, I'm not playing in tune anyway.
That's hysterical.
I was like, well, who cares? And then the first jazz that really attracted my ear, believe it or not, was avant-garde. So I really got into Late Train, like Ascension. Well, I started at Love Supreme, and then I was like, well, what else is there? So Interstellar Space and Ascension. And then I got into Pharoah Sanders, a little bit of Albert Ayler, and Kenny G.
Oh, okay. That's
This is
avant-garde.
yes, this is back when CDs first kind of came out back in like 1990.
Yeah, somewhere around
We
there.
go to Tower Records. Laser discs were happening too. That's when they first kind of started.
I remember that.
So the first two CDs I got were John Coltrane Live and Kenny G Live because they both had sopranos in the cover.
Interesting.
And it was cool because they captured different areas, but they both played modal music. So I could eventually I learned my scales. Eventually, one guy was like, "Hey, man, if you want to play it, man, learn your 12 major scales, man." And I'm like, 12 scales? Oh, So I like learned F, then I learned B flat, and then eventually I learned E flat and got it together. And so now I can play along with these songs. I could play along with Afro Blue. I could play along with Silhouette. I'm actually one of those main guys who starts the Kenny G threads on Saxophonist.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's me. I'm one of those main guys who's
In the
like,
sense, yeah, talk. So the listeners may not be aware. So like you start like threads on Kenny G for what? Like for what purpose?
well, I think that's part of my I guess we're influencers, right? And we all have different unique angles. So one of my angles is sometimes I'll just get a blip in my brain and I'll just post something on the Saxophonist page on Facebook. And that page is notorious. And I do have a pretty thick skin when it comes to backlash on my opinions because it's my opinion. Like I feel like that's okay because that's what I believe. Especially in a digital world, it's not. I don't see these people; they're just typing stuff. The
Right.
keyboard warriors. So
It's road rage with a keyboard. It really is. It's road rage with a keyboard.
yes, I've made a couple of controversial statements where I said, um, I said Lester Young was the Kenny G of his time
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay. Yeah.
because he's playing pop melodies.
Yeah.
He's not playing a whole lot of extra stuff. He's making it sound good. If he plays extra like little embroideries or whatever, accents and stuff like that, it supports the melody, and it's just a pretty melody that sounds real good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that got a huge amount of backlash. People just hate Kenny G just because they just hate him. Just
I
you
know.
know,
And you know what? Here's the thing. You could either like or not like, or just, have not have any opinion about his music. But what you have to appreciate is that Kenny G is one of the smartest businessmen. That's the first thing. The other thing, how many people took up the saxophone because of him?
oh
That's,
yeah,
you know, I mean, it is a phenomenon. It did happen, and I got to tell you, he's got a phenomenal tone. I saw him live once, and yeah, his tone is just ridiculous. His tone live to me is better than on the records. It really is because
yeah,
he
yeah. I
just
agree. Yeah.
fills it up. He's incredible. And he's got chops. People don't want to admit it. He's got chops, but no, I think that's a very interesting statement. I don't think it's controversial at all. But again, yeah, that's why, unfortunately with some of the Facebook groups, like I said, it's road rage behind a keyboard. There's no need to do that.
Oh yeah, that's true. There's no reason for it. Like why? Like that. Nobody who's none of the great musicians are that way. I mean, not for the most part. Like Chris
No,
Potter, not gonna get on the keyboard like, man, you suck, man. Your tone sounds crappy.
exactly.
Like it's just like,
Exactly.
hey, man, if that's what you like, I wish you the best.
Exactly. Because you know why? Because all the greatest players are busy creating and instead of insulting. And that's the thing. And people have to keep that in mind. But going back to your story with so that's really interesting because you looked at the album covers, you're like Coltrane and then Kenny G. And I do think it is interesting that you started with soprano sax because I would have been one of the ones to say to you, look, start on an alto because even that can be squirrely in terms of intonation, but soprano, you got to build your chops up for that, and you got to build up your ears too because it's very easy to play that like flat, and out of tune and stuff. So how did you manage that?
I can tell you what. This discussion definitely leads to the Sidney Bechet thing directly. But as far as I played along with a lot of recordings. I love the sound of the soprano saxophone. I like the fact that it was a saxophone, but not common. So people were like, "Hey, what's that?" It's like it's still a sax. It's still a saxophone. Like coming up in age when I'm like 16 and 17. So I went to Berklee College of Music for a year, and I planned on graduating from Berklee. This is when I'm 18. Like my mother just literally dropped me off in Boston. I was able to get in at a slightly partial scholarship, but it was expensive even back then. I think it's
Yeah.
like 30 a year or something back in 1994 when I went. So I think George Garzone, Joe Viola, Andy McGee, Bill Pierce. So great roster of teachers, and everybody's just like the NAMM show. Like everybody's, you're seeing everybody and getting tips and, talking to people in the hallway, and everybody's really accessible. And I think someone was like, oh yeah, the chair of the, I don't know his name, but he's a clarinet player, and he's like, well, called you to my office because you cannot major on soprano saxophone.
I was going to ask you. Okay.
We don't have that as a thing. And I'm like, but what about Kenny G and like John Coltrane? He's like, yeah, but you can't have that as a principal instrument. We'll let you keep coming and paying tuition, but you can't.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's why I wonder how. Yeah. That's what I was curious about. So, like you obviously sent in an audition tape, or you went there live and audition and stuff, and they saw you on a soprano. Then why? you know, why would they accept you or wouldn't they ask you, like, do you play any other saxophones?
Yeah, yeah. No. They let me pay my money and they let me keep on going to the school. They allowed me to continue going to the school. Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's like a little while back, but yeah, I had some great lessons there, and this definitely ties into the Sidney Bechet thing very directly. I think an awesome lesson I got was from the late great Joe Viola,
Mm.
where he told me, he's like, okay, yeah, play a note, like any note, maybe like a middle C, some just like a burr. He's like, okay, now play that note as loud as you can, like woo. He's like, okay, okay. Now, okay, we can stop the lesson here. Now go play every note like that for a week, and then come back, and then we'll talk some more. You know. So when I came back, I'm just tearing the practice rooms up, but it's okay because it's Berklee. So I come back, and he's like, it's not for you to play everything as loud as possible. You might like to play everything quiet as possible, but I want to make sure you're aware of the different things, so you know that that's a possibility. So you know that that's a choice. He's a really, really wise dude. That's one of the lessons I kind of kept with me. But I still didn't believe in chord changes. And Berklee, and I don't think that chord changes. I feel like chord changes are just a suggestion for the keyboard player. I feel like when in doubt, take it out, and I'm always in doubt. So, and somehow I was able to manage. Like I knew my major scale, so I was able to kind of put something together, and I played along with recordings. So I was able to kind of hang out in the scene. I think Jeremy Pelt was there at the time. We were at the same level. I mean, we definitely were not at the same level. We're in the same, like we're both freshmen at Berklee.
Got it.
He was killing it back then. But we're like, in the same groups hanging out. I was able to hang out with like a lot of great musicians. There's this one musician named Eddie Bayard, and he milked it for what it's worth too. I can't even say I blame him because we're all like broke college students. He's like, hey man, I got the secret for you, man. I got the secret. But hey man, before I tell you, man, buy me a pizza, man, like a grape soda. Hey, you got some cigarettes, because that's back when everybody smoked. It's a terrible habit, but at the time that's part of the culture back in the early '90s. So he milked this for like probably months. He's like, hey man, I'm telling you, I'm gonna pull you to the side and let you know all you need to do is these 3 things, man, and that's it, man. But hey man, hey, buy me some food, man. Like he like really milked it. So then one day he brought me to his apartment. And he like broke down to 3 things, and these are the 3 things I keep with me to this day. He said the 3 things you need as a musician are, he said I had a conception. You need to have a conception, like something that like your feelings that you want to put out into the world, like your raw emotion, before you even say like what language you're trying to speak it in or what style. Just it's the intent or desire or what it is, your concept of just I think that kind of goes deeper than music. And then you need technique to be able to express your conception. Then you need to have some history. Like you need to have history on whatever it is you're trying to do. If you're trying to play funk, you need to know about James Brown and Maceo Parker, and probably Grover Washington Jr. If you're it's like you're playing jazz, you're playing avant-garde jazz, and you have the conception. So that's really really intense. I think I'm still kind of intense at times. Really emotional. I'm like an emotional player, which ties into the blues later too. But he was like, check it out. Sidney Bechet. You need to get with some Sidney Bechet, get some Sidney Bechet CDs. I don't care what you have to do. You have to like go up there and just put some in your pocket and run out. This is like street level conversation. Of course, you have to pay for stuff. You have to or stream them now. So I got 3 Sidney Bechet CDs, and I just before I even knew to even like it, I just did what he said because he's one of the great tenor players at this school. His name is Eddie Bayard. He's still an amazing player. He instead of choosing New York, he chose Ohio because he likes the scene there and it's a comfortable environment. And he's still a phenomenal monster. I saw him play a couple of years ago, and he just it's like just like all of a sudden like your attention just goes like this to what he's doing. He like really kind of makes all the lights in the room kind of get low except for around him, like there's a big spotlight. Phenomenal player. But so I took his advice. And ever since age 18, I always checked out some Sidney Bechet. And just from, I learned some solos by ear. And then eventually I get more into the sounds of Sidney Bechet. And that's something that Chelsea Barrett's told me was, she told me, like, you're playing the licks, but it's like, it's good to add meat and grease to your sound in order to really ignite it. In order to really make it really, almost like if you're trying to be mad with somebody, you're talking like this, like, hey, I'm really disappointed. Or it's better to be like, hey, it's good to have that type of sound to really kind of like support your ideas. So eventually that sound came. And then his music is really, he's one of the forefathers of the saxophone. Him and Coleman Hawkins, there's like a debate because I guess the first recording came out around the same year. I forgot what year it was. I guess Fletcher Henderson for Coleman, and then I forgot for Sidney Hot Five or something. But Sidney plays like really arpeggiated phrases. His phrases really support the chord. Because as far as playing, before there's playing out, there's playing in, but he is the in, right? Like he is in. If there's ever anybody that played in, it's Sidney Bechet. And then he has a big mentor to Johnny Hodges, and then Ben Webster, and a lot of the earlier players. But for me, it kind of seemed like as I matured and got more into the social media thing, I realized he's someone that everybody recognizes. Everybody knows the sound. As soon as you hear it, they're like Sidney Bechet. But I don't really hear people really talking about him, like really getting into his language, really exploring his style. For me, he's like the Louis Armstrong of the saxophone. Like everybody says you have to do Louis if you any instrument. They say check out Louis. He is jazz. Then I guess Duke Ellington said that Sidney Bechet is the epitome of jazz. And my wife had I pronounced it epitome. My wife had to call me. She was like, "Hey, you might want to adjust that video because it's epitome." That was a pretty good one.
That's awesome. But a lot of people would say though that Coleman Hawkins was the godfather of the saxophone. But you're saying really it's more Sidney Bechet.
This is just I wasn't there,
Yeah.
And that is the argument that we had on the Saxophonist page on Facebook. That's a whole lot of back and forth. The little research I did, I just Googled it. And I guess their first recordings came out the same year. And then I thought about it later, and it could be Coleman Hawkins, mainly because Sidney Bechet started off as a clarinet player.
Okay.
He didn't get the soprano sax until he went to France many years later. So Sidney Bechet was on the scene, and he was happening and doing his thing, but he didn't qualify as a saxophone player until he got the soprano. That's what put him into the saxophone family. And I guess he liked the soprano because it just like the Jody Jet, it really gave him a chance to fight against these trumpet players. He could really project over everybody.
And it's also a lot easier to finger than a clarinet.
Oh, goodness. Oh, big time. And I'll tell you the funny thing, we were talking about gear earlier. Could you imagine the gear what type of soprano Sidney Bechet had to play?
Oh, yeah.
How balanced it was or unbalanced.
Oh, my gosh.
The reed, mouthpiece.
Well, just the instrument. Yeah, I mean, just the instrument itself. Holy cow, when you think about it. I've never played like a vintage soprano, but, I played some vintage, not very vintage saxes, but, the intonation's a beast, so we can only imagine. And wouldn't it be something if, these players were alive today and trying out the equipment that we have now? I mean, can you imagine that? That would be amazing. That would be an awesome topic for a saxophonist page.
That's a real good topic. That's an excellent topic for saxophonist page.
Yeah.
Wow. Usually we do it the other way around. Imagine John Coltrane like at a Theo Wane booth.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah, do that. Do that. Tag me in that.
Like a Jody Jazz booth or like Sonny Rollins. I mean, those guys, they wouldn't leave. Or imagine them at NAMM. Imagine Coltrane walking around NAMM. He probably wouldn't even take the saxophone off his neck.
No. No. And he'd be trying out all the horns and all that kind of thing. And then trying out the Selma Supreme, right? And then, and then those Eastman horns, which are awesome. No, for sure. But yeah, so getting back into, so your interest in Sidney Bechet was starting really with this guy, Eddie Bayard, right? When you think about it, and he's mentioning this, and then you're taking it to heart, you're listening to him, especially since you bought him lunch for like probably months. Anyway, so you wound up paying for a lesson.
And grape sodas.
Grape sodas. Grape soda is actually really good. But anyway, so, you started listening to Sidney Bechet and you started getting into it. And then you started, I love the line that you said where, before there's out, there's in. A lot of people want to do all these crazy types of things, but you got to learn how to play in, meaning in the key, right? As opposed to doing all these crazy types of things with substitutions and slipping and all that kind of stuff, playing out. But it really resonated with you, no pun intended. So then what what came after that then? You started, Eddie Bayard gave you this information. You started, really taking it to heart. Chelsea gave you some advice. You took that to heart because Chelsea's saying to you, put some emotion into it. I think you called it meat and grease or something like that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm glad you described it. Yeah.
Believe it or not, she was talking about the blues stuff when she made that comment. But for me, it kind of resonated over everything.
Sure.
And it's something where I practice. Can you practice tone too much? I'm not sure, but if it is, that's me. I practice tone for probably 60 to 70% of my practice time is tonal things. It's not just doing like long tones. It's so many different types of like the guitarists have pedals. I practice a fast vibrato. I practice a slow vibrato. I practice just a growl. Trying to really get. I hear you do that on videos too. Like you have a real good blues aesthetic. Yeah, I like that. Because it is not. Don't play bebop on blues. I mean, you can, but not blues. I'm sorry. I'm talking about blues. Like I'm talking about shuffle. You can put bebop on blues, but so many people make that their foundation. Like not like King Curtis. And that's another tangent. But
King Curtis is awesome though. That's some like his sound. His style, Stanley Turrentine style, like that stuff resonates with me, and I think that's what comes out of me. And that, especially when I was in New York and, whatever, but that New York kind of like gritty kind of, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I hear it in your playing too. And then it's like, so I like that. Then I like Derek Trucks' sound, which sounds like a gospel vocalist. Then I like, and I even like Kenny G's sound. I like Sidney Bechet's sound. So that's a whole lot of sounds to practice if you like them all. Like, because it's a sound, right? Like even before the notes, like I think it's more important to capture the sound, and then the sound kind of tells you what notes to play to a certain extent. But there might not be advice for beginners, but for a more intermediate, advanced player, like once you get the sound and the vibe, you're playing like La Vie en Rose, and you're like. It's like the vibe. You're in the vibe of it, and the sound is a big part of that, I think.
Yeah, that's so interesting. The sound tells you the notes to play. That's an interesting way to put it, as opposed to the genre would tell you the notes to play. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Can you expand upon that a little bit more? And it's not a beginner tip; it's more of an intermediate tip. Like, expand upon that a little bit more.
Yeah, like say if it's a blues, and when I say blues, I'm not talking about a Charlie Parker blues, which is blues. Sometimes I get a little backlash from that. I'm talking blues like B.B. King blues or like a shuffle. Say if you're playing a shuffle, and I'm like do 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 do. You can approach it like real growly, like do 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 do. Or you can do it like like B.B. King, where he used a real fast vibrato, just like Sidney Bechet. He'd be like, boop, yeah. My voice is a little hoarse because I'm getting over a cold.
Okay, no.
Boop, boop. You can't believe I'm trying to sing on your podcast.
No, it's all good. Hey, listen. I've unfortunately done it too, and I'm surprised I haven't lost listeners. So it's all good.
But it's like so many different ways to approach, even within the genre, you can approach it so many different ways. And I guess that's where it kind of goes to the history. Where it's good to know history because it's good to know those different approaches. Like it's good to know the Charlie Parker approach, or you can do like a more Coltrane approach, which is more pentatonic, and which is interesting because Coltrane came from Charlie Parker, as we all know. And then there's like a Michael Brecker or Ryan Devlin approach where you're doing all the shifting, Chad LB approach where you're doing all the shifting and stuff, and or you can get back to Sidney Bechet, and all approaches work. You don't have to do every approach. You can just do one or two but yeah, I think it's good just to know the things that you like. And if it's one thing, play that one thing. For me, it's like 6 things. So I end up spending most of my time on tone, just trying to get that sound together. I want to make that sound easy. I want to make the sound part be easy, and then I could get the notes in later. So and it could be a thing where it's kind of like working backwards, or I guess that's a relative statement, like who's to say what's forward or backward. But yeah, right now I feel a reason to really focus on the different tones, different types of, I have like 6 different tonal things I have kind of like set up, and I like 10 minutes each, then that's about an hour, then I can move on to other things. if I have decent amount of time to practice.
And you're using, again, you're using new equipment, so you're also feeling that out, making sure that that works
Oh,
for you as well.
yeah. So glad I'm talking to a sax player. Yeah. You understand all that saxophone stuff. Yeah, it's an easy conversation. Because now it's like new equipment, so it's like trying to apply that. Like, can this new equipment get the old sounds? And
Yeah.
when I first tried the mouthpiece, I thought it was more like 80%, but it cut, so that's like enough. But now I'm realizing that this new mouthpiece gets different sounds. Like other things I couldn't get on the DV, I can get on the Super Jet.
Mm.
And it's one of those things where we're kind of limited by our imagination. It's like, like you have the gear, and if the gear gives you a lot of what you're looking for, like what can you do within that? Like, does it have to be what Sonny Rollins did? I think it's good to have an idea who Sonny Rollins was, but it doesn't have to be anything about what Sonny Rollins did if you don't want it to be. It doesn't have to be anything about anybody. I know Miles Davis said something, one of his little blurbs I've seen, where he said he likes modern musicians. He said a modern musician doesn't have to know anything about history. Um, he said it's all about capturing the current cliches in the air. And I think about this stuff just because Miles said it, but personally, I think you need to have history, according
Yeah.
to me.
I
I think
never
it's
hear that quote. That okay, wait, I just have to digest that for a second because I never heard that quote before. Um, I,
I interpret it. I interpret it a certain way. I think he was probably talking to himself. You know, I think
okay.
when he said that, he's because when you're Miles, he was there for all that stuff, so he knows about. He was there with Birds, so he doesn't have to study bebop anymore. Like he was
Yeah.
there with Coltrane. He helped create Train, so and he had the bands with like Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter, and he was there. He made that stuff happen.
He
So for
created the
him,
movements. Him and Mary Lou Williams. This is another thing that people don't realize. So Mary Lou Williams, phenomenal, pianist, and her and Miles Davis were the two people, and there could be more, but just that stick out, that were part of each movement of jazz, that helped to create each movement of jazz. Miles gets more recognition for it than she does, which is unfortunate. But Mary Lou Williams is another person as well. But yeah, what you're saying, I mean, all right, Miles can say that, but he is history. He created the history. But I don't know how true that statement is for someone who's like, for example, someone who's listening to podcasts and be like, oh, wait, if
uh,
Miles said that, then I don't need to study this history crap. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna do my own thing. But no,
yeah,
you need to understand it's sort of like when you're living in a country, right? You have to learn the history of it. If you go to move to another country, you really should study up on the history of the country, to know why people evolved to where they are right now and stuff like that. So it's the same thing.
it's so true. And also think about it as far as like a language. Like imagine learning Spanish from a robot. Then all of a sudden you get around some people, and it's like, where's the flavor? Like, where's the your accent is off, and there's no flavor in what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing could be attributed to music. I think it's better uh, to know more. Um, my teacher was the type of guy who he wanted to be like a singer on a saxophone. So the way he would be like a singer, for me to being like a singer is playing along with Aretha Franklin. For
Mm.
him being like a singer is playing Autumn Leaves, not Autumn Leaves, playing Ornithology in all 12 keys, or playing like Donna Lee in all 12 keys. Because
Okay.
that way everything's at his disposal. He doesn't have to think about. He's in every key. Like he could play anything in every key.
Okay.
For him being a singer is like being free enough to just follow your brain where it goes and not have to worry about. Oh no, I'm in F sharp. You know.
That's so interesting
Yeah.
how what you're saying right now, a singer in all keys, how we interpret that, how there's different interpretations of that. Because when you first said that, I'm thinking about, how would Ella Fitzgerald sing? How would Frank Sinatra sing? But no, you were thinking Aretha Franklin. Yeah, that's awesome. And then this person's thinking, well, no, like ornithology in all the keys. That's so interesting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was that's my first lesson. He asked me. He's a great teacher. His name is Skip Gales. He unfortunately can't play anymore because he had this hearing thing.
Oh,
He used to practice like 5, 6 hours a day. He was the baddest guy in Richmond by far. He would wear he'd wear his saxophone neck strap at the grocery store. Like you see him in the store with his saxophone strap on. He's one of those guys. But um, but yeah, he was just a scientist of sound. Just my first lesson, he told me to play a bebop melody, then asked me to play it in another key. And then, of course, I fumbled around on another key, and he was like, "Okay." So he's just so like really honest, sincerely honest. He was never trying to put anybody down, but he felt it's better for a person to know the truth. He's like, "Okay, so either you don't know the song, or you don't know your horn." And he's really just like, "Okay, so either you don't know your horn, or you don't know the song." And I'm just like,
yeah, yeah.
he's like, "It's okay. Like, you got some stuff going on. We're gonna work on you. We're gonna work on it. It's gonna be good." And I worked with him for maybe 3 or 4 years, and I still use his method when it comes to the blues stuff. Um, but yeah, I do have to split. I think in probably about 20 minutes. So I should probably talk about the important stuff, I guess.
Well, no, actually, everything you said has been really good. So let me bring this to the, your latest project, right, which has to deal with Sidney Bechet and use the blues. So let's talk about that.
Great, great, great. It's stuff I think about all the time, so it's really easy to talk about. So as far as the Sidney Bechet stuff, I love Sidney Bechet. Here in Honolulu, our jazz scene is not quite as big as it used to be. It used to be crazy, but now it's not as much jazz. So a lot of, for me, it's like,
Wow.
it gives me a chance to really focus on the stuff that I like.
Okay.
And I love I'm sorry, I'm also in a gypsy jazz group.
Oh, cool.
The area code here is 808, so we call ourselves Gypsy 808. And it wasn't until the third gig where I realized that I can play Sidney Bechet stuff in this music because it's all like all of me, So it fits in perfectly. So it gives me a chance to use all that Sidney Bechet stuff regularly, and it's wonderful. So I realized that Sidney Bechet being the foundation of jazz language, and it's the very definition of playing in, I believe, is Sidney Bechet, or I guess you could say Coleman Hawkins. That's still up for debate on who the forefathers of jazz or whatever. And I've been practicing this method, and I've been creating my own method for my teacher, like I mentioned before. I've been using his method of transcribing and getting licks from the solos and playing them in all 12 keys. So and I've been using this exact same method. I figured I might as well just make a book, and show everybody the method that I use in order to learn. A lot of people ask me about how do I get the sound and how do I play this lick and how do I do this thing here. And it's one of those things where so many jazz musicians are kind of I think I can confidently say that definitely not all, but so many of them are kind of stuck in that modern jazz period. Like they're stuck in that like Michael Brecker area.
Okay.
And then the Chris Potter area, and then and for a lot of people it starts with Charlie Parker. Like the whole jazz starts, but Charlie Parker, the bebop era, was kind of an offshoot of the swing era.
Yeah.
That's like a lane. It's like a tangent, which is awesome, and I love all that stuff. But like Duke Ellington is kind of more of like what jazz is, or like Louis Armstrong and these guys, just coming all the way down. It's like a music that people dance to, social music. It's like pop music of that time. So it kind of captures a lot of that aesthetic. It's also like a real something that people can kind of easily relate to, because everybody kind of likes that, like drinking wine and you're like in the 30s, and a lot of people have those retro parties where everybody dresses. They call it the Roaring 20s,
That's
but
right.
we play music from the 40s. But no one ever says, hey, you guys are in the wrong year or nothing like that. So it's just a great area to build language. All in my book I have 4 transcriptions. Then I have 30 pages of licks in all 12 keys. They're written out in all 12 keys to make it a little easier. And I have a video accompaniment that I'm putting out in the next day or two. I did the video. I just have to edit it. It takes some time to get these things edited sometimes. So I have to edit it out where I'm playing through every exercise in all 12 keys.
Got it.
Just to kind of give them a guide. It's one of those things. I think it's a good way to kind of add flavor to a person's playing. Especially if they're dealing with bebop or dealing with like a lot of pentatonic stuff. A lot of people are still playing all the things you are. They're still playing all of me. And I think it's nice to whether a person wants to really immerse themselves in that old school way of playing, or just take some of it along with them. I think it's a good way to do the same thing that my mentor Eddie Bayard said to me. The reason he said the Sidney Bechet thing was because he wanted to. He said if you have Sidney Bechet and you're playing, nobody can ever talk trash about you.
Interesting.
They can never say you don't know where you're coming from, because you're playing soprano and you're playing Sidney Bechet. So you got your history. All I can say is they don't like it. They can't say that you're not playing jazz. So from their perspective as well, that was my perspective. It's like, am I a jazz musician? When am I a jazz musician? Do I qualify yet? Or is this the year where I get to be called a jazz musician? Because it's one of those things where either you are a jazz musician from when you begin, or you never get there, until you learn every song in all 12 keys and transcribe every, so you know what I mean? It's like, depending on who you're talking to, they say whether you qualify or not. I don't know. But yeah, I think Sidney Bechet definitely well, I think about this stuff a lot. But yeah, Duke Ellington said that Sidney Bechet is the epitome of jazz. So theoretically, according to Duke Ellington, if you only check out Sidney Bechet, then you're playing jazz.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't mean to sound triggered.
No, it's not. It's not a question of that. So here's the thing, if Ellington was alive today, would he still say the same thing? That's the thing to think about, but at the time, yes, but what's really cool, you're highlighting someone that, people know about, but they don't really know about. They tend to maybe skip him over, and maybe they go for Coleman Hawkins more, than Lester Young, and then they'll hit on Charlie Parker, on Cannonball, on Sonny Stitt, all these people. But you're hitting upon someone that maybe people just haven't really explored before. And, I'm just thinking off the top of my head too, like if you were still in, like in your master's or even in your doctoral program, just doing like a whole thesis, like doing all the research and stuff like that, that could be a whole doctoral thesis and stuff like that. That was just a thought. But I guess the point, just planting the seeds.
No, I thought about it. I thought about just only doing Sidney Bechet stuff. There's only a few people who really like immerse themselves in that style in a way that really sounds good, in my opinion. There's a guy named Oliver Franck. He's a French soprano saxophone player, and he's immersed himself in the style. And I first heard him on that Wynton Marsalis orchestra that he has. I think they did like a old school celebration, including a celebration of the style of Sidney Bechet. And he's like fierce. Oliver Franck, he's like super fierce. There's other people that say like, yeah, Sidney Bechet played like this. And this is like, kind of,
But they're not.
I listen to Sidney Bechet, and I can say like, it's kind of like comparing, I don't know, but it's just not really like sounding like Sidney Bechet that much. Sidney Bechet's personality was he's kind of like a ruffian, or because it's a different era where he had to be like real tough and stuff, and a lot of people didn't have rights, so he kind of had to be like a fighter. Apparently he got in a shootout over a chord that someone said he played the wrong chord, so he's like, hey, I challenge you to a duel, 10 paces, then he his shot missed and ricocheted off a wall and hit a lady in the leg, so he ended up going to jail for like a year and got deported from France. I'm just saying that to illustrate the fact that like these guys were like fighters back in those days. Like they had to be like super strong to support what their message or to support their music. Nowadays, I mean, no one's getting knife fights.
Well, no, they're just what do you call it? They're doing road rage on the keyboard instead.
Exactly.
So
exactly. It's like you never see the person at all. It's just like, or someone might vibe you. They might be like, something like that. It's a different time. Fortunately, I'm so glad I was born in this time now, where we have to deal with stuff like that. But that personality is in his music too. Like if he plays a minor blues, he's like he could you really feel that like strength and that like fear, like the way maybe like a lion feels fear if he see some poachers coming. He's just like an attacking, but it's like fear attack. Or I mean, it's like a lot of different. And this is my interpretation, but I feel like a lot of he was definitely like a very emotional player, but at the same time, he didn't just play like eighth notes. He played like in one bar, he might play eighth notes, a triplet, and 16th notes all in one bar.
Yeah.
Because he used to like getting inspiration from the blues, from marches. A lot of times they played marches and turned the marches into like more swinging. So he still uses some of that like Sousa articulation.
Mm.
Really interesting stuff. Yeah, I was in the Navy band too. I did 8 years in the Navy band, so we played a lot of marches. So it's kind of interesting playing all those marches and now seeing how they kind of all directly relate to something else that I'm doing. You know.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting too. And the thing though is that okay, so you had a little bit of a background in terms of Sidney Bechet, listening to him, all that kind of stuff. Then you're in the Navy, you're doing all these marches, totally get it. I wonder if you made the connection at that point, when you were in the Navy, how, you know what I mean? Like how the marches kind of, or maybe not at that point, maybe it was after.
Kind of, kind of. I knew I liked the marches. Most people didn't like the marches because it's like, oh, we gotta play as much. Like once I got it, and I think when I got the thing about the marches, so many of them are like two feel, like so it's literally marching. Like the music is marching.
Right.
My teacher told me I was having a hard time with the articulation because I'm trying to swing stuff and all this. And she's like, just think about marching. Just march when you play. I was just like, okay. You know.
Yeah.
So it really is like a two feel. And Sidney Bechet plays like real similar to that too.
That's so interesting.
That's like pop music of his era was like some march coming out. Like, oh man, did you hear that new Sousa march? Oh,
And it's weird for us, right? It's weird for us, but again, we're looking back at history, and when people see what's going on 100 years from now, they'll be like, "What we were listening to was really weird." You know what I mean? It's just the pop music of the time. So let me ask you this question then: you have this book. You're going to be putting out accompanying videos and stuff to help people to hear the stylistic components, to make sense of the licks, and also it'll probably help people that maybe aren't strong readers, right? And maybe it's gonna help them to learn the licks by ear and internalize it better. So do you have the book is available now though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How can
Yeah,
people
finally got it out.
Yeah.
I think last time we spoke, I was trying to get it out. Then I finally got it out, and I sold some copies too. I'm real happy about it. So it's my first book, so there's a heck of a learning curve, as I'm sure you know. When you first begin something, you have to figure out all these different things.
Yeah.
So I have it in PDF form. Ron Fix helped me get it. I went to school with Ron Fix. He's a phenomenal saxophone player and transcriber. He actually transcribed a Chad LB's book.
Wow.
He's the guy that did Chad LB's, like all that wild stuff. So he didn't have a hard time with the Sidney Bechet stuff. So he gave it to me in PDF form, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. But I couldn't get the PDF converted to the necessary form for so many of these other book companies. So I had to find a place that actually took PDF, where it wasn't distorted and weird. So I found there's a website called Gumroad.
Oh yeah, I know that. Gumroad.com. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. If you go to Gumroad and type in Sidney Bechet, my book comes right up.
Got it. So that's where you're selling it. So okay. So we'll put the link in the show notes, everybody. So this way you can capture that. But also, I know you're going to be editing the videos. They're not going to be ready yet, right? But where will the videos? How are you going to, put the videos out? Are you going to have it on your YouTube channel but protected? Because, it should be for people that bought the book. Like, how are you doing that?
Yes, I'm doing exactly the way you said it. I'm going to have it on my YouTube channel. I'm going to have it protected. And I'm going to, the good thing about the Gumroad is you have to put in your email in order to receive the book. So I receive everybody's emails. So I'm going to personally email everybody the link to that video.
Got it. Cool. All right. And then what we'll do, like I said, we'll have the link, the Gumroad link. We'll put that in the show notes so people can purchase this. And let me ask this question. Do you have a website? That's the first thing. We'll ask you what that is. And then on your website, are you also promoting the book?
So as far as website, I don't have a website yet. There's a learning curve, and I went to so many people to help me design a website. And it's one of those things where it's like, all right, well, I'll do it for $150. Then they kind of do half the website. It's like, okay, well, come back next week and pay me another $150,
Okay.
Or one guy was like, hey, check it out. Just sign everything over to me. Then I'll manage it. then I'll give you a website to, it's one of those things where I have to find the right person to make it for me.
Okay, got it.
So the short answer is no, I don't have one yet.
Then where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm mostly I'm probably on Instagram more than any place else.
Okay.
And my Instagram handle is use the blues.
Right.
And I need to I'm moving. I want to get more onto YouTube. I'm not doing bad on YouTube, but I need to like be more like I want to be more YouTube focused. I want to be like you, Donna.
No, that's awesome. And what is your YouTube channel your name, or what is your YouTube channel?
Yeah, everything. My YouTube channel, my Facebook, and my Instagram is all use the blues. It's one word.
Got it. Okay, cool.
It's all glued together.
It's glued together, so we can reference people to that. And like I said, we'll find the gumroad.com. We'll find that particular link for that. We'll put it in the show notes. Now, let me ask this question. So right now, your current project is the Sidney Bechet book. You've got the book, you got the PDF form. It's on Gumroad, which is awesome. You're going to be editing the videos, all that kind of thing. Are there any upcoming projects in 2025 that you're doing? Any shows or anything like that?
You know what? If I could say this, I think two things that's super important. That if it helps one person, I think it's very worth it. I went to college. Like my mom told me, I just needed to have a college degree is all I needed. I went to a good college, got a degree, ended up mowing lawns for 2 years afterwards. Which is good, honest work. You paid the bills. I'm real thankful for that. But I have a music degree, but I wasn't able to play music. I wanted to get into education. Turns out I needed to get at least a master's, and preferably a doctorate in order to actually teach school.
In college. Yeah, in college.
Yeah, yes. So I'm like struggling, trying to figure out what to do. A guy dared me on a wedding gig to join the Navy band. It was a dare. And I'm like 30, 32 years old. I have nothing going on. I'm just like, how bad can it be? Like if they pay me anything, then that's great. So I highly recommend military bands for anybody that doesn't know their direction, or if they're not sure. You could just do 4 years. You get the GI Bill. I think they start you like around like $40,000 a year. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere around there. So many health benefits. My credit was in the toilet. I mean, all the way trashed, but now it's good. It got good pretty soon after joining the military. I was able to pay off all these. It's so nice to have like a debtor call you and they're like, hey man, where's the money? It's like, hey, can I give you a check? Can I give you it's so great to be able to do that. The military bands kind of like really saved my life.
Yeah.
But I will say, I just want to give it a little quick blurb. The Air Force and Navy is more musician first. So if you join the Navy or Air Force, you're doing music guaranteed. If you do Army or Marines, you're a soldier first. So you're in the band, but they can get you to do gun stuff.
Okay, you still have to go through boot camp though for Air Force and Navy, right? You still have to do that?
Yeah, you have to go to boot camp for everything. They do have premier bands in DC where if you get in one of those bands, you get like $70,000 a year. So yeah, it's definitely good to shoot for that. But even the regular fleet bands, you can have a family, you can like pay your bills. They won't get you rich, but they definitely have you taking pretty good care of yourself and playing music and maybe seeing the world. That's how I ended up here in Hawaii. I'm originally from DC and never probably would even have a chance to visit Hawaii mowing lawns. But I was able to be stationed out here, and then I moved to Chicago and then came back to Hawaii. And I've been just doing music full time for about 8 years.
And the interesting thing though, it's not easy to get into the Navy bands. That's not an easy audition.
It's not that. It's not that hard. It's okay.
Okay. All right. No, okay, because
Yeah.
I had a student audition for the Marines band, and some of that stuff was pretty tough, It was pretty
It could be. Yeah, I think typically it's you have to sight read a march or two. You have to have a prepared classical piece, even if you're not a classical player. But if you're like a decent player, they can spot you like a mile away.
Okay,
At least for me, it worked out that way. The jazz part was real high. The classical part was not so high. They just kind of put them both together because they need some good players in the. Definitely recommend though the Navy or Air Force. Yeah, there's definitely truth to that. I think it kind of depends on who's auditioning you as far as that. Yeah, I just wanted to get that out there, just for anybody who's desolate and on their last leg and they don't know what to do. You can look to a military band. My only main advice is if you go to a recruiter, make sure you have it in writing that you're going to the band. Have it in paper writing saying he will go to the band or he or she will go to the band. Because if you don't have it a contract signed, they could make you a barber.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is really good advice about, being in the bands. But let me ask you something. So you were in the bands for 8 years. Like I know people, a great friend of mine, a guitar player, Brian, back in New York, phenomenal guitar player. He was in the military, but every year they had to audition to stay in like the dance bands and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like one of the first guitar players that was able to do two tours, on guitar, as compared to usually they don't allow that. So did you have to re-audition every year, or every tour? Okay. You were
And
just,
then not in the Navy. I only know about the Navy, and now once you're in, that's it. I will say that the better you are, the more they put you to work. Like for me, I was in a rock band, jazz band, Dixie band. Then I also did the classical stuff, and I did the ceremonial marches and then parades. So yeah, I mean, it's the military, so if they want to do well. So if they find somebody that's good at certain things, they're like, hey, stick them in there. Jason, put him in there. Yeah, put Jason in there too. Just
yeah, but
do
that's
something.
awesome though, right? All the experience, that's awesome, That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. But my life would not be what it is if not for that. I'm so thankful for that. I would have retired, but my wife got homesick. Yeah, she got homesick and wanted to come back to Hawaii, so I was able to get out now. But also, I wanted to say that, and then for the use the blues stuff, my story is a little different. Where I started off playing jazz, then I saw the scene shifting before it even shifted. I saw where things are kind of going more R&B and more popish, and this is a big thing for a lot of players. Where because I worked with a lot of them, it's like, oh, I got this wedding gig. I'm like, dude, it pays like $300. It's like, their plans like, and it's just like, I don't think the bride wants to see a trombone player or a trumpet player looking like disgusted at their wedding. I think this is like a kind of important day for them. They want to make at least pull your cheeks like this to create the illusion of a smile. Like,
Turn that frown upside down.
yeah, just make it seem like you're maybe having an okay time if they're paying you money. So I dealt with a lot of this, and it caused me to kind of start checking out smooth jazz musicians so I can kind of better honor the style.
Got it.
So I
Okay.
checked out for 2 years. I did a super deep dive into like Kenny G, Grover Washington Jr., David Sanborn, Kirk Whalum, Mindy Bear.
Oh yeah,
Mindy
she's
Bear is my number one. That's my favorite. So glad I was able to meet her at that last NAMM. Yeah, I fanned out. I fanned out talking to Mindy.
she's if you don't know it, and guys, I had her on the podcast. Every year I catch up with her at NAMM, see how she's doing, all that kind of stuff. She's a wonderful person. She really is, and she knows her stuff, and she's a very smart businesswoman. Her book, How to Play Madison Square Garden or How to Sell It Out, whatever. Yeah, as my friend Steve says, it's required reading. Really should definitely check that out. Mindy Abear's awesome.
I read that book and my income quadrupled from reading that book as far as getting my look together, at least more together. Looking like cool stuff with the saxophone on stage. A lot of people they hear music with their eyes. That's like more than 50% for a lot of people. Like they're like yeah, saxophone. Yeah, let me see that saxophone. Like they don't care about like let's check out this lick. They're like no, bring that sax over here. Did it. They want
Yeah.
the more party stuff, and it equals money. It equals money if nothing else. It could be fun too. Yeah, so yeah, I piggyback on what you said about the book. So for me, checking out smooth jazz artists, and I kind of hit a wall at a certain point where I really liked what Mindy was doing, and I was so glad I was able to tell her this too, because she is more of like a blues aesthetic. Like she growls
Yes.
and real beefy, a lot of meat and grease on her sound.
Rock
So
also.
that so I found myself checking out more of her stuff eventually, and I'm thinking like, you know what, like I like this smooth jazz presentation. I like a lot of things they do to help the entertainer aspects. But I think it's something else I'm kind of going for here. Like then I started hearing blues musicians. And I'm thinking like, you know what? Like when I think blues, even though Charlie Parker is an amazing phenomenal blues player, I think B.B. King. Or I think like when I think blues, I think like Stevie Ray Vaughan, like blues players,
Yeah.
and they just so happen to play guitar. And I'm also thinking, if a person wants to learn bebop, if you play piano, bass, or anything, you're checking out Charlie Parker stuff because he's like that's the bebop source of bebop. Even though Dizzy Gillespie and so many other great musicians, Thelonious Monk, so many other people you can listen to and get bebop too. But if you want to go to the source, so for me, I'm thinking if I want to learn blues, maybe I should go to the source, and just see, because I'm here, I'm just playing these little wedding gigs anyway. I don't have anything to lose, and I noticed when I started applying this language, it felt better. Then I saw a different response because like a lot of regular people, right, for lack of a better way to put it, they don't necessarily know what Charlie Parker is doing when you hear him. They don't really understand our joy immediately. It's like a acquired taste sometimes.
Yeah.
But for B.B. King or Stevie Ray Vaughan when he goes,
Yeah.
like you feel it, whether you know about it or not. Even if you're from Indonesia, okay, yeah, that's some soul right there. That's some blues. So it kind of gave me a way with my jazz brain. And a lot of people say like certain styles of music's like selling out or whatever. And I hope to really expand on this more in an educational manner. But it's ways to be creative on these pop gigs, which is still kind of more quote unquote legit.
Okay.
Because it's blues and everything comes from the blues. So
Right.
if I play like a B.B. King lick or Robert Johnson, or like anything, Stevie Ray Vaughan, if I play this lick, it's directly blues, and music comes from the blues. Like R&B is rhythm and blues, or rock, funk music's blues based, and soul music's blues based, jazz is blues based. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And what you're also saying too, what's really interesting, and we talked about this before we went, we started recording and stuff, is that you were transcribing a lot of blues guitar players, and you have like over 130 transcriptions of blues guitar solos, and how
most
that's
of them are on my Instagram. Yeah, I have most. I'll choose a video and then I'll play along with the video. So it kind of becomes a kind of an entertaining aesthetic too. Instead of just playing up the recording, you get to see the video of the person do it, and it's kind of like my little angle, I guess you could say, for like social media.
Yeah, but not even that though. It's impacted your playing, right? I mean,
yeah, big time. I think a lot of people say I think like a guitar player.
Yeah.
A lot of the blues guitarists learn from horn players, like Louis Jordan's a big one. So a lot of guitarists approach me and it's like, hey man, you just the other way around. But it seems like things are kind of coming full circle here. But
people used to say that about me in New York. She solos like a guitar player, and you know what? Because I was influenced by I had some great guitar players that I was playing with, and it just impacts you.
Oh, okay. It is a different angle, right? It's like even though you're still playing a saxophone, it's like a what's that? The Man Raised by Wolves or something. It's like you're still. Every instrument has their own approach. Like I saw Melissa Aldana's transcribing Freddie Hubbard on the saxophone. So it's like I think it is like everybody kind of has their own unique take. And to me, it's like a cheat code to have your own style. Like just check out another instrument solos, and then you'll just sound like yourself on your instrument. Because everybody's influenced by somebody. You have to get stuff from somewhere. There's a video I want to do where it's like they say, hey, it's important to like speak from your heart and say what you feel. And I was gonna say, yeah, but what if that sounds dumb?
And then someone could say, but you know what? I guess that's relative. Everybody it's relatively speaking. You know what I mean? But the thing is that one of the themes here is history. History is a big part of what you've done, and you just kind of not necessarily fell into it, but sort of, so like you kind of started off, and what's interesting to me, you didn't play saxophone in school. You started with trumpet for a number of years, but you didn't like have saxophone in your formative school. You know what I mean? And you played it and you learned it on your own. And it sounds like you learned a lot by ear,
Mhm.
and that uh, experience has shaped you, you know. And then you met up with other people. You got into Berklee, you know, you met up with some people, Eddie Bayard, all that kind of thing, Chelsea, all that kind of thing, and you took to heart some of the stuff that they said, and you used your experience transcribing, and you transcribed other things, and that impacted you. And then you went to the Navy, which was really smart, and you know, you're playing all different styles of music. But you know, back in your subconscious, you're realizing that all these marches, you know, marches were popular music, you know, a very long time ago, right? And you marched to them. And jazz was conceived as popular music. People danced to it, you know, and then it went off in different branches and all that kind of thing, whatever. But there are people that actually dance to bebop. I played some gigs where people were dancing when I was playing bebop. I'm like, holy cow, I never saw that before, right? But that was really
Yeah.
cool. But point being, though, with the history, with the transcribing, you know, you're keeping that alive. And, you know, you found something with like Sidney Bechet resonated with you. And, you know, you can call it an angle or whatever, it doesn't matter, but it really resonated with you. And the whole like blues idea, the whole of, you know, you got to play in before you can play out. All these types of things came together. And now you've got this book out. You're going to be adding the videos to that. And, you know, you're starting to see some, you know, not starting to see some success, but now you've got this other path that, you know, to go off of. I think it's so awesome. And, you know, I wanted to congratulate you on your success with that. So before we go, because I know we're on a time constraint here, we've got your Use the Blues, one word. Okay, that's going to be your Instagram handle. Search for that on YouTube and Facebook as well. We'll put those links in the show notes. We'll put the Gumroad link as well. So you could check out Jason's book on Sidney Bechet and take advantage of that for sure. And listen, Jason, I just want to thank you for being on the podcast. It was awesome meeting you live, and now it's so cool that we got the chance to do this.
Yeah, I'm truly honored that you actually reached out, and it's so great running into you at NAMM.
That was fun.
Another one of the great things about NAMM that no one really told me about is how you see all the best products, but you also run into the best people. And everybody's right there on the same level. Like you'll see Stevie Wonder walking over there. Marcus Miller be over there looking at some basses or something. And like, hey, Marcus, so what do you think about those strings? You know, it's like we saw Najee, Mindy Abir,
Gerald Albright,
Gerald Albright, and they're all just hanging out. They're just like, look at the saxophone right here. You know, and you can tell that everybody's approachable. Everybody's super nice. I don't know how everybody's so nice there. It's like it normally large crowds would tire me out, but I was just coasting the whole time. You know, I'll try to get some food, and then I'll go someplace, and then I'll go down a rabbit hole, and then like 3 hours later, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm hungry.
Yeah, I know this. And there's so many people. Grace Kelly's another one. She's phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking with her at the MEO booth, you know, and she's getting into, you know, different types of like pedals and all that kind of stuff, you know, so it's so much fun to catch up with people and to meet people. I've seen Jeff Koshawa a million times. Darren Ron's been there a million times. He wasn't there this time. Derek Brown, another great person. Jason Whitmore. Yeah, just some great people for sure. But listen, Jason, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you reaching out. Real happy we're able to make it happen.
Cool.
Yes, indeed.